I discovered my husband's been secretly sending money to a woman overseas he's been talking to for years, and I know that sentence tastes like late-night radio, too dramatic, too glossy. But it did not arrive with a violin swell or a booming narrator. It arrived as a tiny blue notification on a Tuesday at 10:11 a.m. when I was trying to coax a jammed printer back to life at work, and I'm Syra, 32, an immigration caseworker who lives inside forms and proofs and the soft chaos of other people's families trying to become official. I spend my days asking strangers for bank statements and affidavits, and then I went home to a marriage where the evidence had been tidily edited, which is cruelly funny if you squint. The printer groaned and gave me a half-chewed page. I slapped the side like that would scare it into competence, and my phone buzzed on the desk. Face Up, our bank app, large international transfer approved. My brain did the accountant thing before the wife thing. I looked at the reference, WISE. Recipient, MO. Memo, bills and rent. The amount was not catastrophic, but it wasn't lunch money either. I blinked at the word rent as if it were a typo that owed me an apology. My job has trained me to notice patterns. The same way a forged pay stub repeats a pixelated line, the same way a real relationship has ordinary transactions, groceries, petrol, impulse lilies. We had none of those to MO. I didn't call him immediately because the day wasn't the villain. 3 asylum intake interviews, 2 calls with a consulate that pretends email is folklore, 1 couple who brought their baby for luck and their entire file in a grocery bag. And the muscle I use for panicking is the same one I use for getting people calm enough to answer questions. I stared at the notification, took a photo because documentation is not romance but it is safety, and told my body to keep doing the small human things: inhale, exhale, finish the form. I biked home in that tired way where the city moves like a screensaver. Our apartment smelled like cumin from the upstairs neighbor's kitchen and dust from our bookshelf's lifetime ambitions, books that keep implying they read themselves. His shoes weren't by the door. He texted earlier, running late, client call, which is language that used to make my heart beat fond and now sounded like someone practicing a vowel. I made tea because tea is my only religion. The kettle sang and I poured my cup too hot on purpose, just to have a sensation that matched my insides. Then I opened the laptop. I want to pretend I hovered in an ethical debate. I didn't. We share finances and a life. I clicked. The bank page was a ledger of tiny betrayals disguised as errands. The WISE transfer was not a one-off. It had siblings, neat and regular, every 2 weeks since March. Some were smaller, $150, $220. Some bigger, $950. The names varied, sometimes MO, sometimes Mariam O, once Mariam Odu, cut off like the bank lost interest. The memos were weirdly domestic: electric, medicine, visa fee. My ribcage did that microcar in a compact parking space thing, maneuvering feelings in and out without dinging the paint. I checked our email. I had his password because marriage and streaming subscriptions and the naive era we used to live in. Nothing obvious. Receipts from the same transfer service to the same name, a jeweler in March, a thin gold chain I've never seen, a pharmacy in a city we have never visited that prints on receipts like trauma, date time till hash. The sender was his alt Gmail, the one he made for newsletters when he got righteous about spam. You know what else people use alt emails for? I waited at the kitchen table. I looked at our succulents like they were jurors. He came in flushed, apologizing to the apartment the way people smile at sunlight that's been waiting for them. Sorry, he said, dropping a bag on the bench that clinked like ambition. Client's procurement manager discovered bullet points at 4 p.m. Who's Mariam? I asked, because some questions don't need appetizers. He froze, mid-shoulder shrug. Not cartoon guilt. Human. He put the bag down gently. He looked at me and then at the kettle as if the kettle might provide context. She's a friend, he said. The vowel cracked on friend. From a forum. Old. Before us. It's complicated. Complicated is a word that has never once made a situation less complicated. A friend you've been sending rent to, I said, very even, like I was about to ask him his current address for the form. He blinked. It's not, she's in a bad situation, he said. Her father, there's a hospital bill. It's easier for me to send in dollars. It's temporary. He grabbed at all the words that coat themselves in virtue: father, hospital, temporary. Since March. I rotated the laptop toward him and tapped the dates. Every 2 weeks. And in January twice. And a chain in August. He exhaled in a small broken laugh, the kind you hear right before someone says a thing they wish they didn't have to confess. I've known her for years, he said, and I swear I felt the calendar reformat itself in my bones. We met on a language exchange app, then moved to email, then we talk. She's in Lagos. She wants to study. He stopped. He is a good talker. Stopping means he tripped over something real. Why not tell me? I asked. This is the only question that matters and also the least useful, like asking the fire why it's hot. He rubbed his forehead the way you rub a wall you've walked into. Because I knew how it would sound, he said. Because it started small and then it wasn't small and I told myself I was helping. Because with you everything matters, he added, which is meant to be love but in this context is an accusation. I said, call her. He blinked. Now, I added. On speaker. For daylight. He went pale in a way I've only seen on men in waiting rooms. Syra, he said, my name a plea and an anchor. Why? I asked, rhetorical and not. Because she exists in the dark in our house, I said. And I spend my days pulling people's lives into light. I would like mine in it too. He hesitated for one heartbeat and then did it, perhaps because shame can be a decent coach in the first quarter. He dialed a number that started with +234. It rang. A woman answered with a cautious, warm hello, the sound of a fan in the background making weather inside a phone. He said her name in a voice I recognized, gentle, guilty, grateful. Mariam, he said. I'm with Syra. Silence, a soft intake of breath. Your wife, she said, not a question. Her voice had the lilt of someone who learns languages for joy and survival. Yes, he said. Then to me this is Mariam and to her she knows. Not quite what I asked him to say, but we were in the same postcode as honesty. Hello, Mariam, I said. My voice came out like the calm before an embassy door opens. Can you tell me what my husband is to you? In nouns. People answer differently when they're asked for grammar. She was quiet long enough for me to hear the faint clatter of a street beyond. He is my friend, she said at last. He is my helper. He promised when we needed. He listens. He sends money for school forms and rent. He tells me about rain in your city. It wasn't dirty or romantic or even interesting, which made it worse. It sounded like that creeping intimacy that builds because no one bothers to name it. Do you ask him for money? I asked, the way I ask clients to tell me where the remittances came from. Yes, she said. Sometimes I ask. Sometimes I don't and he offers. We push and pull. He says it is easier for him. Are you together? I asked, the crudest and truest version. She made a sound I could not translate. He is married, she said. I am in Lagos. Life is not a film. That sentence pierced me and patched me in the same second. I thanked her because I am ridiculous and polite. She said sincerely, I don't want to break someone's house. I want to build mine. I hung up because there is a limit to how many good sentences a person can absorb while their own life is a cracked bowl. He stared at the table. See, he said, but the C didn't have the swagger of vindication. It had the sag of someone trying to comfort themselves with the least awful corner of the truth. She's not a scam. I've seen videos. We talk. He scrolled his phone and showed me a handful of clips, short, ordinary ones, which is exactly how real lives look. Mariam on a balcony with laundry flapping like flags, her little brother pulling faces, her father in a faded polo shirt reading a newspaper with a concentration that looks universal. The timestamps stretched back years. The earliest were just text, then voice notes, then calls. How did this start? I asked. Language exchange, he repeated. Her English is perfect now, he added, like his efforts were part of a curriculum. And the jewelry, I said, pointing at the March charge. He looked ashamed, properly. Her birthday, he said, but the sentence fell apart in the middle. And I liked giving, he admitted small. It made me feel generous. Useful. There it was. The vanity of charity. The sugar high of being the hero in a story with easy receipts. I told him to sleep on the couch. He nodded. That night, alone in our bed, I dreamed of forms, the tidy little checkboxes of my work, and every time I checked one, the paper grew another section titled Explain. The next morning, I did the thing I do for clients in trouble. I made a timeline and I asked questions a judge would ask. Dates of first contact. Amounts. Overlaps. I wrote consent and concealment on 2 separate sticky notes because my brain needs doors to walk through. I called my friend Tanya, who is the only person I know who can be both furious and clinically practical in the same conversation. Do I need a machete or a spreadsheet, she asked. Both, I said. She brought over Parathis and a legal pad. We ate and wrote like we were studying for a test we didn't consent to sit. In the afternoon, I told him we were going to the bank. He drove with both hands on the wheel the way you do when you're trying to perform adulthood. At the counter, I asked for full statements of any accounts with his name, any linked services, any cards issued in the past 2 years. The teller, who had the professional neutrality of a person who has seen crimes disguised as generosity, printed pages and slid them into a white envelope like evidence. We sat on a bench outside and read. There were other transfers I hadn't seen, small ones from his own personal savings, a Western Union from 2021 that made my throat feel made of salt. Years, I said, and he said yes, and there was nothing to be done with the way my name felt like an afterthought in a timeline I share a bed with. He started to explain again, and I stopped him with my hand in the air, traffic cop style. I'm not the therapist, I said. I don't want your childhood in a box right now. I want to know if you intend to keep sending her money. He looked up, a man who had at least learned which answers mattered. No, he said. Not without you. Not without us deciding. The us felt like an overreach, but I let the grammar pass. We were late to class. I asked if he would speak to a therapist alone first, a boring one with a reputation for refusing to turn affairs or rescues into TED Talks. He said yes. I asked if he would sit with me in couples therapy, not to debate philosophy but to inventory our actual verbs. He said yes. I asked if he would write to Miriam and say we would not be sending more money for now and that if we ever did, it would come from a place not infected with secrecy. He said yes, and I watched his face as he typed because people's faces tell the truth their words are rehearsing. He wrote, I have been unfair to my wife and to you. I need to stop all transfers. I will not block you, but I will not be the person you ask for help with money. I have to repair what I broke. He sent it. I exhaled, dizzy with the strange relief of a door even if it hits you on the way out. Our therapist had a lamp with a paper shade that made the room look kinder than it deserved. She asked him what sending money did to his insides. It made me feel like a person who could fix something quickly, he said. She asked me what not being told did to mine. It made me feel like a woman in a house with a missing wall, smiling because the wallpaper's nice, I said. She nodded and didn't reach for jargon, which made me trust her. She made us draw 2 circles on a paper, his, mine, the overlap, and then write money, secrecy, pride, care in the places they belonged. I cried in a quiet way people assume is stoicism. He cried once, like a pipe's first cough. I had prepared to be angrier at Miriam than at him because it is easier to assign villainy to an ocean than to your own kitchen. But the truth that made me weirdly soft was this: in our call, she never used the word love. She used rent and bills and school and listen. She was not my rival. She was the proof that my husband's goodness had a hole in it big enough to move smuggled furniture through. She texted once after his message. Understood, she wrote. I'll be okay. Thank you for what you already did. I hope your wife forgives you when she is ready. I stared at the when in that sentence like it was a patient whose vitals were good but whose eyes knew something the monitor didn't. Forgiveness has not been a cape I put on. It has been a weird little hat I try for an hour and then take off because it presses on my temples. Some mornings I wake up and he is on his side, mouth open just enough to look foolish, and my whole body floods with a loyalty older than wisdom. Some nights I want to pack a small bag, the one I use for home visits, put 3 blouses and my toothbrush in it and go sleep on Tanya's couch and spend a week pretending the word wife is a thing that belongs to someone else. Both impulses are true and neither is a verdict. We made a list of rules that are not romantic. Money meeting every Sunday, 15 minutes, topics only. Any request for help from anyone outside the two of us comes to both of us before it goes anywhere else. If he feels the urge to be useful, he has to say urge out loud and ask me if we can do the same thing with a local charity that doesn't require secrecy or 2 a.m. transfers. If I feel the urge to audit him like a client, I have to text Tanya first and let her tell me to go drink water. We told 2 people each because secrets rot in families like damp. He told his sister, who said, "You always wanted to be the guy with a cape, try being the guy who carries groceries." I told a colleague who took me into a supply closet, put 3 biscuits in my hand and said sweet or salty, and when I said salty she swapped one out and told me about the time she loaned her boyfriend $800 and the return was an essay about his feelings. We laughed, the kind that doesn't heal but gives you a minute to breathe. I met Miriam once on video, not because I wanted to, but because I needed a face that matched the outline in my head. She was wearing a blue t-shirt and her hair was pinned back with the casual competence of a woman who doesn't get to schedule crises. We talked for 7 minutes. I said I work with families who cross borders. She said her border is a queue she's been standing in for years. I said I'm trying not to hate you, which was a ridiculous thing to say, and she nodded like we were colleagues in a sad industry. At the end she said, "I hope you and your husband are kind to each other." I will be okay. I believed her because of how she said okay, like someone who has practiced not being. If you want the gossip, no, I didn't discover a secret baby. No, I didn't find photos of them kissing in a hotel with those awful gray curtains. We found something less thrilling and more corrosive, years of small choices that formed a tunnel. He decided to be generous where it made him feel brave and kept it from me where it made him feel small. I decided to be competent in ways that made me unaskable, which he will tell you he never resented, and I will tell you I don't believe because I am not a nun. We have not become saints. He still sometimes reaches for his phone like a snorkel. I still sometimes turn into an investigator while making tea. But there are also gentle, specific improvements. He deletes any folder that has an innocent name with a guilty agenda. We started a joint help fund, a tiny account for requests from our families, the people we actually belong to, with a rule that anything beyond it requires 2 yeses and 1 reason that doesn't flatter us. We take turns picking a local organization and volunteering badly once a month. He stacks chairs like a man who used to send money to feel useful. I translate for a woman at the clinic who was too shy to tell the doctor that the word sometimes covers a disaster. Do I love him? Yes, in the way a house loves its own floorboards, conscious of the squeaks, grateful for the parts that don't complain. Do I trust him? Some days the way you trust your knee after a sprain, strong enough to bear weight if you're careful on stairs. He keeps asking me to tell him the worst thing I think about him now. I won't. I tell him the next small thing I need instead. Put your phone face down, tell me a story from when you were 8 that doesn't make you sound like a hero, take out the garbage, say goodnight like you know I can hear you. If you're reading this because you found a rent memo where no landlord exists, here's the only useful list my job and my mess have given me. Write down what you know before you ask what you feel. Call your own friend with mean eyebrows, ask for nouns, insist on daylight. Decide which part of you wants to be right and which part wants to be free, drink water. Do not let money turn you into a detective when what you need is a witness. And when people suggest you burn something, letters, accounts, his clothes, remember that fire is a ritual and rituals deserve honest audiences. Don't perform for your pain. Tonight, I'll come home to an apartment that looks exactly like itself and a man who is learning how to be useful without writing his name on generosity like it's a plaque. We'll eat something that underestimates salt. He'll tell me about a client who brought a puppy to a budget meeting for morale, and I'll tell him about a grandmother who kept her passport in the freezer because she thought it was the safest place. And somewhere between laughing and washing dishes the conversation will become ordinary again, the kind of ordinary that tells you the roof still works. Maybe I'll make a cup of tea. Maybe I'll sit on the floor and talk to the plants in the tone I reserve for stubborn toddlers and succulents. If the 10:11 a.m. notification in my head starts flashing again, I'll put my hand on the table and feel it stubborn, forgiving wood, and I'll pick the next honest thing. Stay in the room, keep the lights on, and tell the truth in small complete sentences until my own house believes me.